Hey, 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 it's Founder Friday. That rhymed.
Yo, yo, yo.
So this week on Founder Friday, we're going to answer the question, how do you know if one developer is better than another? Or like, how do you evaluate a developer if you aren't a developer and you don't know? So I have today with me my co-founder, Chris Castiglione, who's the teacher of our Programming for Non-Programmers course, in which we cover topics like this. And we're actually going to be announcing a live version of it at the end of this Founder Friday.
So talk about that.
Some more details on that in a few minutes. But so how would you evaluate a developer if if
I didn't know how to code?
Yeah.
I would probably learn how to code a little bit.
That's totally fair.
Even though that's not the easy answer.
Yeah.
But I think it helps because if you can code even just a few hours of coding or have done some projects, you can more likely have... I equate it to dancing sometimes. Like if you've done it before, it's going to be easier to like talk that language and communicate.
And is there any quick way to do that you can think of? Like check out Codecademy or like
any
free online tutorials or something? We have an hour of code, I think, that we released, 4 hour of code. So if you want to check it out, just put your email and you'll get this like hour like building an application.
Yeah. I would just invest some time in that. But so aside from that, I mean, I think that's like the fundamentals is like, you know what you're talking about a little bit. Mm-hmm. But there's going to be a level at which you're wondering, how do I tell, if this guy who's been doing Ruby for 4 years or this guy or girl who's been doing, Ruby for like 10 years, who's better? How do you know?
Yeah.
I think there's some easy ways to just tell. Looking at their portfolio has always been number one for me.
Okay.
And then having the person go through what their contribution was on each of those pieces.
Okay. So like you would ask what to see a portfolio?
Well, I mean, if we're talking about web design and web development, I would like to see what they've been making over the past few years, whether it's screenshots or whether they could walk me through an application that they made.
Yeah. So you would ask, like, can I see some of the projects you've worked on in the past?
Definitely.
And then what are some follow-up questions?
Yeah. So if they've made a few projects in the past, I would just want to know how they contributed, in what way. Mm-hmm. And I would probably take, it depends, maybe 5+ minutes to go through each project even and just get some idea. Because once people start telling the story, you can tell a lot about their contribution, whether they were just the designer on the project or whether they led the team, whether the team was large, whether it was just them doing freelance. Mm-hmm. None of those are better or worse, but it just kind of shows what their role was. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that kind of helps. Get people talking, you know what I mean?
That's a good point, because I think sometimes people, from the outside, don't really get a sense of what someone's role was in a project.
Yeah.
Like if you say, here's a site I built, well, what that really might mean is me and 4 other people worked on this for like a year. And, I did the back end, but like it's pretty, so you're like, ooh, that looks nice.
Exactly.
But there was like a designer, and the person had nothing to do with it.
Exactly.
So just, I guess, you want to get a sense of that, or maybe the person did everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Going one step beyond that, if you wanted to get deeper into it, talk to somebody on that person's team, get a reference,
and see what they were
we
like
do
to
that
work with
all the time. And if you're new to this, if you're just starting as an entrepreneur, that may sound scary, or it may sound like, I don't know. I would feel that way a little bit in the beginning. You're like, who am I to call this person and take a half an hour of their time to ask them? But no, you can just get somebody on the phone, maybe for 15 minutes, and there's some good resources and references out there for how to conduct those calls if you're nervous about it. But long story short, I think seeing what their contribution was and then talking to someone else on the team, even in that first interview with the developer, we have a little trick here where we'll say, like, when I talk to your boss or the other developers on the team, what are they going to tell me about your performance? Because you'll get some early indicators from that applicant.
You get really interesting responses to that.
Yeah.
I also like, asking follow-up questions about the project. A personal favorite question of mine is like asking, oh, this is an interesting choice that you made here. Why did you decide to do that?
Oh, great.
Why did you, whether it's design, like what was your thinking behind the design here?
Yeah.
Or why did you decide to put this page
100%.
here or do this on this page? Because you'll get a sense from their follow-up answer about whether they really thought about that decision or whether they're just like, I don't know.
Totally, 100%.
And you want someone who's like, once you ask that question and show that you are interested, is like leans forward and gets super excited. And it's like, oh, well, I was considering all this stuff and this. Even if you don't really understand what they're talking about, you can be like, oh, cool.
Language is so important because also the way that they communicate that to you, if when they're explaining this to you, if they're talking over your head or they're condescending in two negative cases, that's going to tell you a lot what your relationship's going to be like working with this person.
Yeah.
They're going to be the kind of person that doesn't know how to look. I mean, developers have a reputation sometimes for being these people who like are not social, or I don't know. I think that stigma is going away. But my point being, you may need somebody on your team who's going to communicate it, and you're going to learn in that interview. That's a great time to learn if this is going to be the person who's going to be able to keep you in the loop.
Yes. I think the no asshole rule is a great policy, which is just don't hire assholes. Like, if there's something about if the person's condescending, if they are saying bad things about people, don't work with them. Like, no matter how great of a developer they are, there's a lot of rock star developers out there who don't work great as part of teams. Yeah. Right? And that can be a big problem later. Yeah. Now, that doesn't mean that someone has to be super, outgoing and social and all that stuff. But certainly, like, an asshole is a special category of people you want to avoid. Yeah.
I have another one, because that made me think of one time where I felt like I worked with a guy that was a bit of an asshole. And one of the big mistakes, we actually worked with this person together. It was a long time ago, before the company. And one of the mistakes I think that we made was not seeing the work for weeks and weeks and weeks. There was something we were working for when we were out in California. And I just felt like not seeing the work and then all of a sudden seeing it, and there was just so many problems. So my lesson from that was having check-in points regularly, weekly. And so I think the takeaway here is you can work with somebody on a project basis up front and maybe see a little bit of what they're working on. And you might not be able to read the code perfectly, but starting to see indicators that it's working, like a 1-month trial might be a good way to kind of step your feet in.
Yes, a trial is always a good idea.
Don't give all the money and just come back in 3 months. That is not good.
A feature or something small, like a test thing, because you want to test how good is their communication style and how different is the thing that you end up getting from what you talked about and what you asked about.
Excellent.
Those are really, really good points.
Yeah.
I feel like that's it covers a lot of the good questions.
Yeah. I think those are good.
Yeah.
All things that non-technical people could start doing.
Yes, exactly. One final thing comes to mind, which is, ask people about, what's their favorite, what's their favorite stack, like coding. What do they like to code in and why?
Yeah.
Do they do testing? Do they test code? What kind of test system do they use?
Yeah.
Do they use version control like Git or GitHub? And even though someone's been coding for a long time, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are a very good or productive coder.
Right.
Because technology changes often, and I think you should ideally be looking for someone who's open to trying out new things.
Yep.
And so definitely a red flag or a warning is if somebody is kind of, like poo-pooing the newer technology and saying, no, this is the right way to do it.
Awesome.
My way is the right way. Because it means that they generally are missing out on a lot of the advancements. And people sometimes have that kind of mindset, right?
This is awesome. So the points of Mattan that you're bringing up, if you don't know at all what testing or using Git or pair programming or any of these concepts are, this is a great kind of segue to, you might want to take my course that I'm launching. It's live right now, and you can sign up. It's going to be a limited amount of students, and we're going to work in a Slack channel, and I'm going to shoot out videos week over week and work together to get some developers up to speed, to get some non-technical people up to speed so that they can speak like developers.
This is awesome. So I am currently taking the acting masterclass with Kevin Spacey.
Oh yeah, I love it.
Where it's he's workshopping with people. You can ask questions. It's all interactive.
Yes.
So you are like the Kevin Spacey of this programming for non-programmers class.
Yeah, exactly.
People will get access to you, and it's going to be like a tremendous learning experience.
Yeah, I'm the Frank Underwood of programming. I think I'd rather be Kaiser Sose. One or the other.
So, if you've been thinking about this stuff and you finally feel like it's time to jump in and learn this and answer some of these questions you've always had, check out Programming for Non-Programmers Live with Chris Castiglione.
Yeah, for the month of, we're starting April 11th, I believe, is the first day, and it'll run for 4 weeks. And I'll be there.
And it's all online.
Yep.
And it's not 9 to 5. It's, you can take it in your own time.
You can ask me any questions you have, and there'll be a lot of great stuff and a little competition at the end too.
Okay, very cool. So if you want to check out more info on that,
Yeah.
Check out the links below. And thank you guys. This has been Founder Friday, and I'll see you next week.
Yeah, this was fun. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.